Gardens are constantly growing and changing, and that's what we love about them. But with change can come problems. It might be extra sun, a prevailing wind, or extra moisture. Rather than putting up with these problems, I'm going to show you one way you can adapt so you can get back into the garden. And this is my problem area. Now, I used to grow flowering perennials through here because it used to be full baking sun. But the more compost I added to the soil for the flowers, well, the trees have taken off and now we're in a lot of shade. I have updated the planting. I've gone for hydrangeas and gardenias. But look at the grass. It's absolutely disgusting and it's never going to come back. So I'm going to rip it up. We're going to be putting in a new path, a small seating area, and then that way I can get back to enjoying one of my favourite parts of the garden. The first step is to mark out the areas before you do your digging out and excavation. I'm going to do our small seating area and then the path after that. Now, when you're digging out, you need to allow enough for your footing. In this case, it's going to be compacted road base. Because it's domestic use, it only needs to be 75 millimetres thick. You're then going to have 25 millimetres of bedding sand and then whatever you're using for your paver on top. So here, I'll be taking about 140 mil. Now, I hate getting rid of good soil, especially when I put so much work into this stuff. So instead of putting it in the skip and losing it, I'm just folding it over to bring our level up. That way I have to dig out less and I get to keep my really good soil. Chicken marks the spot.
Chicken marks the spot.
Perfect. Once you've got your road base nice and compacted, you need to think about how you're going to bed down your paver, and that depends on what you're using. If you're using a recycled brick or a clay brick paver, you could just use river sand, screed it out nice and flat, and sit it straight on top. But I'm using a cobblestone, and it's an uneven one at that, so I'm going to need a mixture of sand and cement. Now, you can make this mix wet, mix it up and lay each one, but I'm actually going to use river sand and cement at a mixture of 6:1. I'm going to put it in dry so I've got a bit more time to work, and it'll pack around all those crevices really nicely. Because this is a slightly unconventional paving format, it is a little bit tricky and it does take a bit of time, and I'm having to set each individual one. If you wanted to speed it up, you could just use recycled bricks or a simple concrete paver. It will go much quicker, but because this is such a rustic garden and it's sort of in that cottage style, these suit perfectly. Now, if you've got sensitive skin, you might want to wear gloves. I've been landscaping close to 20 years, so my hands are pretty used to it. And you might want a mask as well. You definitely would if you was going to wet it up, but dry, I don't really find it's a problem. The one thing you do want to avoid, though, is having these joints all line up, because that will make it look like it's brand new. You want it to look a bit old, you want it to look a bit rustic, so just do it quickly, and what happens, happens. For the seating area, I've changed the pattern of my paving. The path is very narrow in that cottage style, so you slowly walk down and appreciate the plants, and then as it expands out, to let you know you've come somewhere different, the pattern's changed to a radial. There's a few different options you can use for filling in your gaps. If you're unsure about using tools, you could just use gravel and some plants and it will look really lovely. I'm using a brick saw. Now, if you haven't used a brick saw before, I'd be a bit apprehensive. They can be quite dangerous. But you can hire them for about $200 a day and they'll give you a nice, clean cut. Because all my paving's rough on the edge, I'm going to have to go around and chip all the edges, but that's fine. If you are unsure, the easiest way to split a brick is with a bolster and hammer. You just line it up and give it a good whack.
Down, passing out, searching for
Once you've got all your paving down, it's a good idea to put another layer of the river sand and cement over the top. You then sweep that in and give it a really good soak. That sets the cement off and it's solid as a rock. Now, it may seem odd that I'm adding compost to the soil because compost holds on to water and nutrients, and this is already a bit of a wet site. But remember, I'm adapting this garden to fit the new conditions. So all the plants here are going to love having wet feet. Can you tell I like my plants? I've absolutely rammed this garden bed as full as I possibly can, not only because I'm a plant lover, but because I want to soften the hard landscaping that we've put in. To do that, around the ground level, I'm using this campanula. Now, this loves a semi-shaded spot and moisture as well. It's going to have this lovely little mauve flower around the edge. Once it's finished flowering, I'll cut it back hard and that will keep it nice and dense. When you're planting up a spot that's semi-shade, you just can't rely on flowers the whole time for your interest, so you need to do it with foliage. And I love the way ferns have this light textural way they just add to a garden. So I've got some ferns in the foreground and then this massive great big leaf of the ligularia at the back. Now, that's an absolute ripper for a wet, shady spot, and the bonus is it also gets a yellow flower that stands above the foliage, so you get the best of both worlds. So there you have it. What once was a troublesome spot in a beautiful part of the garden has now been completely transformed into a characterful oasis. And the best part, the focal point, a brand new pathway.